Next question will take our Dada Amitabhoda from Kuwait. He's also very passionate about Netaji for long time. I know him. Amitabhoda, if you please unmute and put your question for Anujda.
Thank you, Judhajit. My question is going to be about the Gumnami Baba angle, since Anuj is a specialist on that. And we all know that Netaji had a spiritual side to him since his childhood. In fact, what I would also like to state here is that Netaji and his friend Nirmal both had gone to Swami Brahmanandaji to accept sannyas. Swami Brahmanandaji told Netaji, you have a larger cause and you must go back to the nation, while he accepted his friend Nirmal, who later on went on to become one of the presidents of the Ramakrishna order, known more popularly as Swami Madhavanandaji. Now, what I would like to ask Anuj is, Anuj, in his days as... sorry, am I audible?
Please go. Somebody's at the door. I can listen to. Let me go and just check. You keep speaking. Continue because I can hear you. Please kindly continue.
So what we see is Netaji and his friend Nirmal, who went on to become Swami Madhavanandaji, were of that spiritual height where one goes on to become the president of the order of the Ramakrishna Math and the Ramakrishna Mission. So that nugget of spirituality was always within Netaji ever since his childhood. Now, my question...
He became a holy man. He went to the Himalayas. He wandered around, the Himalayas, and so that's a very historical fact.
In his days as Gumnami Baba, what sort of spiritual facets did he display? This is my question.
Before we discuss that, I think wouldn't it be right if we talk why do we believe in the Gumnami Baba? Sorry, because I haven't discussed that, because a lot of people would ask, so that probably we should start by why should we even discuss this thing? Why should we even be... First of all, this Gumnami Baba, that nomenclature sounds very outlandish. I mean, Hindi wala. Delhi, I am a...
spiritual facets did he display? This is my question.
Yes. Before we discuss that, I think wouldn't it be right if we talk why do we believe in the Gumnami? I'm hearing an echo. There's a recording being played. Would ask, so that probably we should start by why should we discuss this thing? Why should we even be...
Please, everybody, please mute. Whoever is not...
किसी का recording play हो रहा है. Recording, I am hearing my own words again and again. Recording play हो रहा है किसी का.
ठीक है. अनुज भाई,
मैं ये कहता कि हम उससे पहले कि हम ये गुमनामी बाबा का स्पिरिचुअल एंगल पे जाएं, पहले हो सकता हमें अच्छा कि पहले हम लोग ये डिस्कस करें कि आफ्टर ऑल हम इसको सीरियसली डिस्कस, व्हाई शुड वी इवन अज्यूम फॉर द सेक ऑफ द आर्गुमेंट नेताजी कुड हैव बीन सर्टेन गुमनामी बाबा. तो उसमें मैं ये बात बोल रहा था कि ये जो टाइटल गुमनामी बाबा बड़ा ऑड है एक्चुअली. इवन मेरे जैसा आदमी जिसकी हिंदी मातृभाषा है, हमें सुनने बड़ा अटपटा लगता है कि बड़ा सॉर्ट वेरी आउटलैंडिश द टर्म गुमनामी बाबा. तो ऑब्वियसली आई टोल्ड यू कि मेरे को जब पहली बार सुना तो मेरे को बड़ा गुस्सा आया था कि कौन पागल है जो इस तरह की बातें कर रहा है. पहला तो ख्याल है कि गुमनामी बाबा सुभाष चंद्र बोस फैजाबाद 85 में तो राजीव गांधी प्राइम मिनिस्टर था. सुभाष चंद्र बोस तो गांधी जी के टाइम के थे. वो पैदा उतने टाइम तक कहाँ जिंदा रहेंगे? फिर जाके ध्यान है कि यार नहीं, ये तो गलत है. गांधी जी तो सुभाष बोस के पिताजी से बड़े थे उम्र में. सरदार पटेल में और सुभाष चंद्र बोस में 28 साल का फर्क था, 28 ईयर्स. पंडित जी सुभाष बोस से 9 साल बड़े थे. मुरारजी भाई नेताजी से शायद कुछ महीने बड़े थे उम्र में. और आपको पता ही है कि मुरारजी भाई हमारे प्रधानमंत्री बने हैं 1977 में. He was the oldest PM India had, I believe, and he did not have a single wrinkle on his face when he became PM. Don't ask me why, because it was a magic potion and which caused people to remain without any blemish and spot free for many years. Now the point is that biologically very much possible for Netaji to have lived that long. Now the reason why Gumnami Baba theory is believable and it should be discussed, even if as a hypothesis, can be classified in 3 categories. There is evidence going for Gumnami Baba which you don't have either for the Russian angle or the plain story. People make tall big claims. I mean, okay, fine, Swamiji has a standing, he makes certain claim, but unfortunately his claim does not become evidence. In Gumnami Baba case, you have first of all and most importantly credible eyewitness account. People who met this man either in UP or who came from Bengal who saw him, either they were those who had met Netaji earlier, so they knew Netaji, so they could identify him. They were people who had served with Subhash Bose, who were part of the INA, and those who have sacrificed for the country, those who have fought for the country. They were recognized people. They were people who had, like Leela Roy, who was like, her portrait is in Parliament House. So you have to believe such people. They, of course, they had no, but all of them, none of them have any motives to tell lies. They were, as I said, credible eyewitnesses. They all said this man was Subhash Bose. So that is one, part of it. Eyewitness account, as you know very well, you can, people get hanged if you have eyewitness accounts going against them. Now, the second the category of the evidence is the documentary evidence. The correspondence that so-called Gumnami Baba had with these people supports the line idea that he was Netaji, because the way they were talking to each other, it was pretty clear. The third, there is forensic evidence to support the eyewitness and documentary evidence. I'm just cutting the story short. When I was in US in 2016, I asked my friends, I would like to have a handwriting test done in your country, because you have no, people, the experts in your country would have no reason to tell lies. And we would not even tell the expert what is the case about. We would just, provide the expert with 2 different samples of handwriting of Gumnami Baba and, Subhash Chandra Bose. We won't tell him. We would just tell him, specimen A, specimen B, please tell us whether they match or not. So we got hold of, we hired the services of Mr. Kurt Baggett, who's in Texas. Mr. Baggett was not told. My name was not in the, in the correspondence which we had with him initially. My friends in America, Deepak Nijavanji and Abhishek Bose in Maryland, Deepak ji is in Kentucky, they approached and on our behalf, and they hired him, and we gave him samples, and he gave us a detailed report. This is the same person. So we have eyewitness accounts, we have documentary evidence, and we have forensic evidence. So this is combining, it makes case clear. Now, coming to Gumnami Baba's spiritual side, that's a very fascinating topic, because Netaji, I heard from people, and I think there's a tendency to get into tantric sadhana and something. So Gumnami Baba was very, very much into spirituals. People thought of him of a spiritual powerhouse. He was constantly, doing worship, and he was into tantric sadhana. He was talking of things which are not in the realm of science. They are in the realm of paranormal. I give you example. I was just discussing with somebody, some time back. Gumnami Baba, for example, said that he believed in ghosts and spirits, that Abraham Lincoln's, spirit comes to the White House. Obviously, if I go around and talk to people in Calcutta in some university, they would tell me it must be, it's nonsense, because science does not believe in, science does not verify that we have, ghosts exist. But if I were to go around the universities and tell people, look, Ronald Reagan, talked about it publicly, and so did Winston Churchill, because Lincoln's ghost has been seen by a lot of people. It's very well known. Suddenly, people start believing in these things. My God, Ronald Reagan said so. So we have this kind of a hypocritical attitude to people. If the source is very credible, source especially is coming from foreign Western countries, they would believe it. Otherwise, they will just junk it. So Gumnami Baba has, he was talking about, in a sense, he said that he was into spiritual practices. He was gaining siddhis. He said he could, go into Suksham Sharir. He could go out of the body, and he said he had, these powers he was gaining with every passing year. And he said he was using these powers for India's good. He made many claims, which on the face of it looked very fantastic. But he said he was there. He was active. He helped India in 62 war. He helped India in 71 war. He helped India in 65 war. And he had powers which people could not comprehend, and he would always talk about India's ancient past, our ancient culture, and he said this is the only way India will move forward. And if you talk about Gumnami Baba, he had contact with the RSS, so he talked about having a metamorphosis. He said, I'm no longer the same person I used to be. There's a great change in my life from my approach. If you are looking for me and you keep only my history in your mind, you will never know me. I'm no longer the same person. I have undergone a metamorphosis. So this is how, in a nutshell. But there can be some specific example. But as I said, he was heavily into spiritual, in sadhana. He talked about all these things. So this is what it is. Hello. Yudhajit, I can't hear anybody.
Thanks, Anuj. That was
Okay,
really that was a great disclosure that you made, and it really gives us a very good lead as to why the Bhagwan Baba or Gumnami Baba,
Bhagwan
as
ji.
some might call it, yeah, Bhagwanji, how how he saw the relation between ancient India and his conviction in the spirit of ancient India. And
Yes.
that explains a lot about his conviction into, what Swami Vivekananda had said. In fact, he got to know Swami Vivekananda through the writings of Sister Nivedita, whose works he had studied. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
I think he
Great.
praised Vedanta Society of New York a lot. He praised them a lot,
Amazing.
I believe. He praised them a lot. He also claimed to have a contact with them.
Yes,
Great,
yes.
great. No, thank you, Amitabh. Darun question. And Anujda, the more we hear, there are so many people are listening to this. It's like you are an encyclopedia of Netaji's life, right? It cannot be a better day than today's day. So we have Parthoda. Parthoda has a question. Parthoda, if you please unmute and ask your question.
Anuj,
Hanji, Dada.
I heard a lot about from Surajit, so I have got two, though I have some idea, but let me hear it from the horse's mouth. One angle is very, very sensitive, that is
Marriage.
about
Daughter and
Anita
marriage.
Pfaff. There were three Emilys, which, no, if you have done a lot of research, so if you can throw light on that. And the second question was about Gomnami Baba. Because I happened to meet Justice Mukherjee in 30th January Road, where he used to stay, and exactly know what he said about it. I can't talk here, and how he was treated by the Home Minister then, Mr. Patil, when he
Shivraj
submitted,
Patil.
when he was giving the report to him. So just a quick glance about it was.
Let me
When
start with
Gumnami
Shivraj.
Baba, that Surajit Das Gupta was with him for some time, and that Sunil Gupta was also with him. But that's besides the point. We'd like to know more importantly about Anita Pfaff.
Let me start with Shivraj Patil because the government of India has made him part of the Netaji committee, which they've set up to observe Netaji's birth anniversary. I don't know what would Shivraj Patil do in it, but he's there. Shivraj Patil insulted Mr. Manoj Mukherjee. He gave him a dressing down and he would not even let him sit. And he would say, "You're wasting public money," and so on and so forth. And Mukherjee was bristling in anger and he said, I'm not going to see this man's face again. So that's how. That's Shivraj Patil. He was like working as a henchman of somebody. He rejected Mukherjee Commission report, single line rejection. When the debate happened in Parliament, Dr. Murli Manoj Joshi spoke. Of course, he put a brave front. Advaniji did nothing about it. He just ran away, and so did many other BJP leaders. But Dr. Joshi was there. He was fighting out, and many others were there. Regarding the Anita and thing, it has something which has to be done in detail. It's a very complex and sensitive thing, and there are many things which I can't say publicly because if I say so, this will be like some Surajit Dada could have said something because he was sitting in his room. I am somebody who's addressing thousands of people right now. And my video will be there on YouTube for many years to come. So there's a certain difference in saying something in the privacy of my room and something which I'm saying publicly. I have met, unlike him, I've met Anita. So let me give you there is a theory, conspiracy theories, and that Netaji never got married. Okay, number one. The answer is Emily Schenkel also said there was no formal marriage. So that doesn't change anything. Number one. Number two, with Emily Schenkel and Netaji had a connect that is proven because there's sufficient eyewitness account. There are reports which are pre-1945 available, British intelligence, which talks about it. They were eyewitness accounts, so it's also clear. We have to go by evidence. And number three, the Emily Schenkel's behavior is compatible with the line that she was in love with Subhash Bose, and she never supported the government theory. She never supported the plain cash theory. She stuck to the point that Subhash was in Russia after his death. Government of India's last attempt to change her mind came in 1995 when they sent Pranab Mukherjee to her, and Pranab Mukherjee wanted to give her, take her from her in writing that ashes in Ankoji temple out of Netaji, so that Pranab Babu can bring it back with much fanfare. She asked him to get lost. So Emily Schenkel's behavior is compatible. She's unlike Shashir Bose's or Shogata Bose's who have shown pro-Congress tendencies very clearly. She did not. And she also did not make any money because there some people have alleged, some people who are probably not good at reading English language. So they're reading too much in government files. Emily Schenkel actually never took any money from Government of India. In fact, whatever money was offered to her was very little. So you cannot pay somebody $100 and expect she will turn faithful to you for entire her life. Nothing like that. No, there's a problem. The problem is I have met Anita Madam. I don't like her. She has behaved in a very undaughterly manner. She did not support declassification. Otherwise she's very intelligent. She knows things. She's half Indian. I spent almost 2 hours with her in Delhi. The problem with me, sir, is this: if I keep the claim in mind, she's not Netaji's daughter. Somebody has to explain it to me. Why does she look like him? She has a remarkable resemblance to Subhash Bose, or she looks like one of the family members. So that's one. So she's definitely linked to them biologically. And the only person around her birth, around that time, who was close to her mother was Subhash Bose. Nobody else was there. That's number one. Number two. So that's. I mean, tomorrow's. So your face is your greatest identification mark. You look like your own parents. And so forth. So that's very. Regarding Gumnami Baba's claims that he said so, unfortunately, Bhagavan Ji, as he was known to his followers, made many claims which are not correct. Sometimes he was probably trying to mislead people as well. So it is also not very clear, what he meant, when he told these people, because he also tried to dodge many people by saying he was not Netaji. Somebody asked him, Netaji, he said, no, I'm a Dashnami sannyasi. So does that mean that he was Dashnami sannyasi? He was not Netaji. And then for him to say publicly, even to his followers, that my wife and my daughter are sitting there. At the same time, I am somebody who wants to, remain in hiding because that is not in India's national interest, and I'm doing something in secrecy, and exposure of my identity and my location probably will put people in danger, put them in some kind of harm. So this will be the last thing I would tell people, that my wife and my child is sitting outside. So because the moment they come to know about it, they would try to meet him, and he would be in trouble. And they were on the West German, that part of the world. So keeping those in mind, I'm not inclined to accept what Surajit talked about, because their basis was solely, what Bhagwan Ji said, and certain anomalies in certain dates, but which have now been clarified, because as I said, that if the claim is that Netaji never got married to Emily Schenkel herself said she was not married to Subhash Bose. The marriage was not registered. It was some other kind of marriage.
Good. Thanks, Anuj. There are a lot of things we need to discuss. What you have done.
We will discuss privately. Let me put you another thing. The Surajit Baba, Dada, and they went and filed a suit in the court about this issue twice. It was thrown out. So there are certain things which can't be done. So I try to instill this sense in their head. The police don't do what you can't. It cannot be done. Chanakya said, "Don't never go to war which you cannot win." This is a war which cannot be won. There is no power on earth. You cannot compel a foreigner to undergo a DNA testing. You can't do that. You can't even tell Indian. You suggest that he or she is a bastard child, and then you ask her, to take a DNA testing. It's not possible. You can't tell an Indian, national, how can you go and ask her for? So this is something which cannot be done. So let the matter, at rest where it is right now. There's nothing we can do about it, even if it is true.
Thank you, Parthoda. Thank you, Anuj bhai. Thank you. We have the next question coming from Abhijit Dattoda, who also lives in Silicon Valley. Abhijit, if you please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Anuj. I'm Abhijit from
Namaskar.
California.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Okay, thank you so much for everything you have done. Everywhere. I mean, there's so much awakening because of what you have done, and before that, Hindustan Times. And I myself have a good connection with Netaji. I studied in Netaji Subhash Vidyaniketan in Agartala, and my aunt was married to INA soldier.
I've been to Agartala. I've been to that school. You have a Netaji's bust there actually in the playground, isn't it? I've been to that school. I gave a lecture in Agartala, so.
Yeah, we do parade in 23rd January. In all over the Agartala, we go through the parade walking. Yeah, and I have a memorabilia from INA. This is from INA.
Yes. Okay.
Official. He used to have this. Anyway.
Okay. Yes.
So my question was basically, do you see anything happening in the government side to have Netaji's portrait on the national symbols like the currencies?
No, I don't
That's what
see any. That is the problem. That is the see. For example, I am there are many good or bad things which are which have been done. So this things are in the shades of gray right now with regard to the central government. On in certain ways they have done well. They have acted well. They have done good things. But unfortunately, the official narrative of Indian history that the British are very kind people. They were generous. They were very nice people. And Gandhiji asked him by doing a dharna, and they left the country. This narrative is sellable in the Western countries. And as you know very well, our ruling class and elite, they tend to see the world from the Western eyes. Nothing wrong in that, but unfortunately, when it comes to such issues, you have to have an Indian eyes, not Western eyes. You would not hear. In fact, Gandhiji and others, nobody talked about what Churchill did in Bengal. Millions of people dying here is no news for them. But what Hitler did in Western countries, they criticize. Of course, you should criticize, but then you should first worry about what's happening in your own home. So that's the double standard, And we in India, like everybody else in the world, we tend to abuse Hitler all the time. We forget that Churchill was a Hindu phobe. Now we're realizing he was to abuse us, left, right, and center, which even evil man such as Hitler never did. I should be, being an Indian, should be more concerned about my own country first. Unless until I have, some kind of a desire to get a Nobel Peace Prize, and that's why I would talk in such a way as if, speak in language people in the West understand. But that's the tragedy, Panditji's name went 11 times for Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't get any. Gandhiji also never got Nobel Peace Prize. Yasser Arafat got Nobel Peace Prize. Would you believe? And so did Dr. Henry Kissinger.
So why not do you have Netaji's portrait in Indian currencies?
As I said, the government of India's view is same. They will not change. The current government is a government of Gandhi Bhakts. That's what I keep saying all the time. There's no change. In fact, they're taking Gandhi Bhakti to an entirely new, different level. I mean, I'm astonished to see statements which Modi ji makes at times. He goes to Australia and he says that we can resolve terrorism, tackle the issue of terrorism using Gandhian path. Then why do we need to send Ajit Doval to Kashmir, or even go for Balakot strikes if that is the whole thing?
I mean, I am okay to keep Gandhi as an icon because he's already there, so we can repurpose for what is good for India. Well, why not bring up another icon?
No, we need to be factual. No, we need to be factual. But the point is that as we were discussing the other, I think Rahul initially talked about it. Fortunately, unfortunately, last 10-15 years, a lot of data has become known. I mean, you have several intelligence and military intelligence files have become known. You have Clement Attlee statements which cannot be disputed. They are available. Views of the insiders, people who have ringside view, it's available. It's pretty clear, India is becoming free has to do with the fact that there was a murmur of revolt in the Indian armed forces, and that's why the British left. You cannot evict a tenant in Delhi. I'll be very frank with you. So that doesn't happen like that. Government of India, which is a Gandhian government, they will not change their own rules, even if farmers sit on a dharna for 50 years. So to expect and to think that in the British Empire receded from India just because there was a dharna going on, I think that's a childish fantasy. But the problem with this, from our side, this theory is sellable in the Western countries, and the Indian elite and ruling class, they have their own interest. In fact, all of them want their children to be settled in those countries, which is not a bad thing to do, but don't become Bobby Jindal. That's my problem is. Otherwise, it's okay to people go live in these countries if they are in a sense more Indian than we are. But then there are also people like Bobby Jindal. So that's the problem. So that is the thing, that this narrative is so strong in the West that Indian establishment doesn't want to change them. I give an example. There's been a demand to change the name of Andaman and Nicobar. Subhash Chandra Bose renamed them Shaheed Swaraj because that's where we have the Kala Pani and those prison cells. We reached to this government, so this proposal was made. Modi ji, of course, he's much different. I can give you the positive points of his also, but they did not change the entire names of the islands, only certain small areas. That was not what we wanted. Wanted the entire island to be changed. What I gathered from that within the PMO there was great resistance, and within the PMO there were murmurs, Japanese, committed war crimes, so on and so forth. So I think there's some British stooges are still in the PMO, and they're still trotting out British wartime propaganda. So it must be clarified. I know these are very dirty words in the other part of the world, but please be see from Indian eyes. The people who were brutalized by the Japanese in Andaman Nicobar were those Indians who were serving the British masters. Now, anybody found in Kashmir who is passing on information to Pakistan is not going to be fed with biryani. So Japanese are fully entitled to treat them in that way. Also, people are making up stories like Indian soldiers were mishandled by Japanese in Southeast Asia. Whatever the claim is, let's assume for the sake of it is the correct thing. What were Indian soldiers doing in Southeast Asia in 1943? Were they there at Mahatma Gandhi's order, or were they there for at the orders of United Nations? No, they were there to defend the British Raj. They had gone to kill the Japanese on the orders of the British. And if the British had ordered them to run down Indian villages, they would have done that without blinking their eyes. These were the same people who killed people in Jallianwala Bagh. So when they had gone to kill Japanese at the behest of their British masters, what Japanese did to them was perfectly right. Okay. My own grandfather was part of British Army. I'm telling you that. When you're serving the British masters, you are upholding the British Raj, you are defending the British Empire in Japan, in Southeast Asia. Why should I shed tears for these people? I would rather worry about my own people who were brutalized. Do you think war crimes did not happen in India? The INA men who were brought back to India, they were tortured like hell in Delhi. So many were killed. We don't have any trace of them. Was that not war crime? You think these stories about in wars, people testing chemical weapons on soldiers? You think the British did not do it? Go and just Google search Rawalpindi experiment. They tested on Indians. Indians did not complain. They were very happy serving the master. अंग्रेज मारा कुछ भी हमारे पे डालते हमें कोई टेंशन नहीं है. ये दिमाग से नोबेल प्राइज का जरा भूत निकालें कि नोबेल प्राइज चाहिए हमारे को, तो उनके हिसाब से बात करेंगे. मुझे अपनी कंट्री का इंटरेस्ट देखना है. मैं आपको एग्जांपल, मैंने अमेरिका में बहुत अच्छे एग्जांपल दिए थे लोगों को. वीडियो दिखा के बातचीत की थी, और उसमें ये था कि साहब Saddam Hussein is as reviled a figure in the West as Adolf Hitler is. But please understand one basic fact of life, that Saddam Hussein was liked by Indians for simple reason. Saddam Hussein was the only head of a government in the Gulf who was backing India on Kashmir. We had good relations with him. When Vajpayee ji decided to make India a nuclear weapon state, he supported India on that point. Every country will have its relations with a foreign country purely on the basis of mutual interest and whether or not that country supports us and not. Nelson Mandela made it very clear when he was visiting New York. When he was asked, you are supporting Fidel Castro, you are supporting Muhammad Gaddafi, he said they were helping me in my freedom struggle. There's a misconception, that Nelson Mandela was a Gandhian. No, he was not. He was having for friends people like Fidel Castro and Muhammad Gaddafi. So, and likewise, take example, great country America, the greatest country in the world today. What are the common values between Saudi Arabia and America? But they are friends, national interest. The same goes for United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia. So all the countries in the world will have for friends the other countries with with maybe God forsaken. But as long as the other country supports you in one way or the other, you are friends. This is how the international relations work. Donald Trump, Donald Rumsfeld very famously said, an enemy of my enemy is my friend. So that's what Netaji was. That's what in the entire context. But then in India, we are refusing to see that point. We are still continuing the Second World War propaganda. So your simple question: will we ever see Netaji's photograph on Indian currency? The answer is no. The government is completely Gandhian. They will not do it.
Thank you, Uhid, for the question, and Anuj Bhai for explaining it so well. Next, we have two of our brothers. I can see Doipayan and Nirmal Lodha. So Doipayan, to start with Doipayan, he raised the hand, and then we'll come to Nirmal Lodha. So Doipayan is from Silchar, another person based out of Silicon Valley. He works in one of the major in e-commerce as well. Very nationalistic guy. So Doipayan, please put your question for Anuj Bhai.
Okay, thanks, Judajit ji. Namaste, Anuj ji. I do follow you sometimes, and Also, along with GD Bakshi, I've been following since last few years, and you are doing really great work on this Netaji thing, because even 10 years, 15 years ago, nobody knew as much as they know now. Like, as you said, like, at least we are discussing, that is also a great
Big
achievement.
deal. Yes.
Yeah. So I have a question, like a slightly different, maybe. So India was under Islamic aggression since long time,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
So what was Netaji's views on that? So I know, like, Direct Action Day and all those happened after, after independence,
After he was
when
brought up.
Gandhiji could
Yes,
not
yes.
control. So what was Netaji's view on the Islamic aggression we faced in Bengal and
No,
like across India?
correct. This is the hindsight and all that. So everybody has a different experience. Things are different in those days. The Congress party view, dominant views was like this. Subhash Bose, for whatever reasons, has he talked about his early life. He said we had many Muslim friends. They used to come to temples with us. So he had a good experience with them. That's number one. And then, like any other Congress leader of those days, he had tried to take everybody along. In fact, the reason why this, I do not know what he said, because I have not gone into his life and time. Maybe Chandrachud Ghosh can answer this better. But this question is often put in the context of his having a lot of Muslims in the INA, and people try and suggest this thing that since he had many Muslims, in the armed forces, he was a secular man, and BJP is not. That is the strategy that TMC and others are taking these days. That's what we get to hear every day. Well, Netaji went to Southeast Asia at a time when he was operating in 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s. We have to understand what was India's primary national interest in those days. Was it to fight Islamists who were no longer there, or to fight the British and get them off our chest? So probably he decided that our main thing which could have been done in those days was to get the British off our back. So that was the core national interest on which he was fighting. And he thought probably the only way we can do it is everybody should join hands and fight the common end. So, and he did not live to see the Direct Action Day, so that's another story. In INA, when he was there, he had with him, people essentially from the Punjab regiment. 50% of whom were Muslims. Many of them went to Pakistan after partition. All I can say that most of them fought well. Those who have went over to Pakistan, they continue to have good feelings for him. They remain loyal to him even after they were gone there. They did not talk nonsense about him. In fact, one of them was Kiani, who was number 2, so to speak, after Subhash Paswal. Number 2 was technically General Bhonsle, J.K. Bhonsle, but then Subhash asked Kiani to take charge. Kiani went to Pakistan. Kiani even became part of the Ziaul Haq cabinet, and Kiani wrote in his book, which he wrote after sometime before he died, in Rawalpindi, that Subhash Chandra Bose was the only leader acceptable to Hindus and Muslims, and if he had lived on, at least he would have avoided all the bloodshed that the country faced. So this is sort of thing. This question of yours will assume a very great significance if the Gumnami Baba angle is true, which I think is. So because Gumnami Baba, that means Netaji was around when Direct Action Day happened. Well, he felt utterly bad about it. I mean, he would sit and even cry, talking about the the manner in which women are brutalized in East Pakistan. He was horrified. He was, in fact, so to speak, that he would. I just cannot tell you what he felt about it. He felt very bad, and he had, of course, connection with the Guru Galwalkar ji. Letters been found and so on and so forth. He talked about ancient India. He talked about all these things. So you are intelligent enough to understand. He said there's been a metamorphosis. I'm no longer the same person I used to be. I give you one example which does not relate to what you asked just now, but he talks about, let's say, the 1965 war. And he talks about having contacts in the Indian Army. That the dead man, that means he has a contact with the people. He also claims to have a contact with Shastris, indirect. He says, he talked about it, those days, that our condition was so bad, our morale was so down after the defeat of 1962 war, that when Ayub Khan met, Ayub Khan almost joined INA, by the way. He did not join, but he was also POW in those days. Ayub Khan met Shastri ji in London, and Ayub Khan was 6'6" tall. Shastri ji was barely 5'2". And he looked on, he said, I can come to Delhi any day I want to. This was we had our morale was broken because the way we were defeated by the Chinese. Then the so-called Gumnami Baba, he wrote about it in those days, that Ayub Khan started telling people in Pakistan that these dhoti wala Hindus were our slaves for 800 years. What do they know about war? We can defeat them whenever we want to. And in a rhetoric way, that this Gumnami Baba answered. He said, when the ghosts of the dead crossed the border, went to Lahore, there was not even one mullah to give adhan from a mosque. And if I had got 6 days more, there would have been no Kashmir problem. So in that sense, he talked about history. So as I said, this question will assume a very different meaning if the Gumnami Baba angle is established. But before that, it was a different time, different content. Don't forget that even Jinnah was not a very rabid, that he was basically pushed to Muslim League by some people. Both the Bengal Chief Minister, Muslim, and Punjab CM, Sikandar Hayat Khan, did not want partition. So now we look at everything. I'm from Delhi, so I know history very well. I'm somebody who has, walked over the walls of Lal Kot, Prithviraj Chauhan, Muhammad Ghori, entered from which gate, I know that. My ancestors were driven out of Kashmir. I'm very sensitive about it. So this much I can tell you, that if the Gumnami Baba theory is correct, then your answer will be entirely different. There's a metamorphosis. He was no longer the same person, and he was very much concerned about national security. In fact, he once said, do you know what is the biggest misfortune of this country? He put this question. Then he answered. He said, no military seer after Chanakya for 2000 years. This is the single biggest misfortune to have hit our country. This country has to understand what is the military thinking and military strategy in that. And then he, of course, talked about civilizational context. And he said, we should not become like Egypt. Egypt has no link to its past. It's gone. So he was very, very mindful of. So you will get much more light on this thing in our book Conundrum. There we are quoting from his letters. I told you about his saying about Ayub Khan. Actually, this is surprising, and that's why it will lend credence to what he said. Ayub Khan actually talked like that. There's a very well-known General Musa's directive, which was declassified in 1990s, in which they actually talked about Hindus having very low morale. So isn't this amazing that this so-called Baba was aware of what was happening in Pakistan in the 60s? And likewise, he had multiple things to say. I mean, for example, he talked about an underground top-secret bunker in Beijing, whose existence was not known until 2000, Tisha Chong. I cannot imagine a Baba sitting in a remote part of UP would know that thing. Do you expect a Baba sitting in a remote part of UP to talk about the first Afghanistan jihad, talk about FATA region of Pakistan, drugs trade, what's happening? So it's a very strange, very, very intriguing character. So that's how I would reflect it actually. Read my book, you'll love it. I mean, you love it. Most people are, just many people, they think it's not possible. Please read, you go to Amazon, you just see the reviews.
Thank you so much, Anuj bhai. Great question, Doipan. Next would be one of our great supporter and fellow nationalistic Dada, Nirmal Lodha. Nirmal Lodha, if you please unmute and ask your question.
Hi Anuj, good evening.
Namaskar. Good evening. Namaskar.
Good evening. I have been in touch with you. I had spoken to you earlier also. You've done a good service to the country. Ours was a generation when we were fed movies on Gandhi.
Yep.
And then we were fed. And then your movie, your book, and my kids and my family had sat around, and everybody around has sat around and heard about what you have to see about Netaji Bose. And I believe you have done a great bit of research on him. And in spite of whatever has been fed to us, we still believe that we won independence because of Netaji Bose. And there is a generation, a lot of population of India which believes in that. I have just got, Yes,
Indeed,
and
correct.
there was without any propaganda. People believe that Netaji won us the freedom. So that is irrespective. But I have got two questions, and one of them is, what is yet to be classified, and why do you think it is still not done? Number one. Number two is, do you think that Congress was responsible for vanishing uh, Netaji Bose from India, hand in hand with Russia?
Let's take the second question. Congress was no, they did not have any clout in. It was Netaji who planned. I mean, it was circumstances. So he planned his own escape to Russia. He sought asylum. It was given to him, and then he, of course, according to his version, the people who were beneficiary of transfer of power, they were negotiated in such a way that they compromise India's long-term security interest. This is what the Gumnami Baba's line of theory, and therefore he has accused Nehru and he's called him like a Vibhishan and so on and so forth. That's called him. So that's how the first thing is. First things you asked me this, which is more relevant, ki what has not been declassified. Very famous quotation by Donald Rumsfeld again. They're known, unknown. So there are things you know, there are things but that sort of thing. There are things and you know. So there are known files. So I know there are 33 files in PMO. These files have been declassified and they are on the National Archive website. Now there are known unknowns. There are files whose existence I know, but they have not been declassified. For example, I know my government is telling lies on the floor of the house when they say they have declassified all files. No, they have not even touched a single intelligence bureau file. I have a list of 77 intelligence bureau files, which were duly made available to court of in a commission of inquiry, and the whole details. So that means these are known unknown files. The files are known, but they have not been declassified. And Government of India is telling lies that they have released all the files. No, they have not. And they are unknown. They are files about whose existence I do not know, but I have some idea they are there, and these have not been declassified. Let me give an example. In 2006 onwards, me and my friends got together. We formed a group called Mission Netaji, and we thought we have to do something about this whole case. And we realized that nobody was bothered. The media was not bothered, politicians were not bothered. It's difficult to attract the attention unless until you attract the attention of media and others. There's nothing you can do. And how would people connect with me? They need to know me. They need to see my face on television or read something about me in the print. Then they will contact me and they will they'll give me, they'll support me one way or the other. So we cannot talk about Netaji. And even if you do something, you provide some data to some journalist, they will end up writing a story in Sunday newspaper, the 7th page, and you talk to person who's favor, talk to person who's against, and you make no conclusion. So we thought of reinventing the entire issue and turning the focus from Netaji to transparency. And transparency and declassification are buzzwords in India. They are buzzwords in Western countries, and Indian elite and the academic and intellectuals, they all look up to West for such thing. So they can ignore Netaji, but they will not ignore declassification. For example, why would this idea in 2006? Why should Government of India in this age and time maintain secret files about Subhash Bose? Why should they be declassified? So that was an idea, and we knew that even communists will not, publicly will not, challenge that position. And exactly what happened. And so we thought of filing, RT as luck would have it. We have the Right to Information Act enacted in India in 2005. In America, you have the Freedom of Information Act. In India, we have the RTI Act. Using it, we asked for certain documents, not given to us. The matter went to the Chief Information Commission. Matter was discussed. Government said, no, we have thousands of pages of information, and some of which are very, can cause law and order problems, especially in Bengal, so they cannot be given. The commission ruled in our favor. This was when Congress party was ruling. All the commissioners were appointed by the Congress party, but they were, they had to see the reality. They ruled in our favor. Government released certain files. These files were sent to National Archive, 10-15,000 pages or probably more. As it happens, the decision was taken in 2010. Files, reached National Archive in 2012, and they were, of course, put through those, their process. They were processed, they were catalogued, etc. It was only in late 2014 that these files became available for researchers to see. I went to National Archive, I was Ramesh, I was seeing the papers and files, thousands of pages. you have instance in past when people have made mistakes. By mistakes you have released something which should not have been released. So here I find photocopies of two files which were probably not meant to be released. So these files showed that people linked to Subhash Chandra Bose and his family were being spied upon, by the government of India, the Intelligence Bureau. And so I called my friend Chandrachur Ghosh. I told him this is Watergate scandal. They were spying on people. Nobody knew a word about it. And this was continuing for many, many, many decades. In fact, then the story broke, and then more details came in. That the spying was happening all over the country, and not only they were spying on Subhash Bose, they were evidence came that they were sharing the information with British intelligence after independence, and this became a huge issue. Now, all that the Modi government has declassified does not answer this question: why this was done. Why this was being done? Why were they were spying on the people? Why were they sharing information with British intelligence? The assumption made by everybody, including the BJP spokesperson, was that the government, the intelligence machinery was looking for Subhash Chandra Bose. So they thought if he was alive, he would be in touch with his people who were in the INA, people who were family members, people who were in contact with him in past. So they were typing everybody, each and everyone. So this question has not been answered. Then when I look into the Gumnami Baba issue and other issues, I find that even American intelligence got some wind about him. I cannot imagine why the IB does not have any information about him. So that means they're hiding something. So in short, your question, Government of India has not declassified all papers. In fact, they're lying, in Parliament, making a claim that they have declassified. In fact, I was provoking the TMC members of Parliament the other day. Why don't you go and file a privilege motion against the government for telling a lie in Parliament? So that's the sum and substance of the story right now. They have not released all the files. Intelligence files are not touched at all. And the problem with that is unless my government, my country declassifies its own intelligence file, there is no question of the MI6 or MI5 or KGB giving us any paper. आप तो अपना पेपर किसी को दे नहीं रहे हो इंटेलिजेंस का, तो रशियंस ने कोई दुकान तो ना खोल रखी है अपने रिकॉर्ड देने के लिए हमारे को.
Thank you, Anuj bhai. Great question. Last, we'll almost end part of our program. We'll take one question from Joyda, and then we'll request Rahulda to conclude, and then your word, and we'll close the program. So Joyda, please ask your question. Joyda is from New York, another proud nationalist. Please unmute and ask your question, Joyda. Okay, if anyone else wants to ask a question, Joyda, I'm seeing some difficulty maybe. Please raise the hand in Zoom, and we'll take one or two questions, and then we'll conclude. It's pretty late for Anuj bhai as well. Okay, so let's do one thing. So I'll request Rahulda. Rahulda, you heard all the conversation. You started with an amazing speech from you to set the context, and you heard all the questions answered from Anuj bhai. We shall request you, Rahulda, to put a concluding remarks on the overall program and how you feel about it, and then we'll request Anuj bhai to close this down. Thank you, Rahulda.
Anuj, first of all, touche. I mean, the way you have uniquely inculcated and embedded the wisdom to put the history in such an iconic way to our listeners globally, that needs to be commended and saluted. So you're doing a fabulous and a fantastic job. There's nothing you said which I would say even I have an iota of a doubt to disagree. It's all like I am talking to my audience. So there's something, definitely there's a symbiosis of our thought process. I'm pretty sure all the listeners who are with me, they have the same ears and mind to have this great consensus of the feelings what we carry for this great hero. Now, the question is, how do we move forward, Anuj? We all pundits who are in this conference listening to you, that one thing I always fear, that before I die, I like to see a courageous India, a developed nation, a powerful country. And the only way this can happen is with our relentless work on putting the right narratives for patriotism. And somehow, if we can work in this orchestrative and a cohesive way to put our thought process, our principles, our fundamentals of Netaji, that's why he's my supreme hero, and we can share his thoughts and we practice that as a mantra, I think the day is not that far where we can bring our 1.2 or 1.3 billion people together. This is not a fight, in my opinion, between religion. This is the fight of our philosophy, our principle, and the doctrine, what we have earned from our Vedas. So somehow we have to put all the youths of India in this code, and I know you have to play a vital role. We are with you, Yuddhajit, and all the people out here. They put so much time and energy to unite our community, unite our countrymen worldwide. So we always think that India should be our first priority, where we can rise our head and never can go back to our gulami. We are still gulam, Anuj. We are still gulam. How do we get our independence? And that's a fight we have and will continue to fight. Thanks. to everyone.
Amazing words, Rahullah. Now we will, reach the last stage of our program. We will request Anuj Bhai to put his conclusion word. And you are an encyclopedia of Netaji's life, Anujda, and we learned so much today. So many people have watched this program and they have learned so many things. If you please put your last words, and then we'll conclude
Thanks
this
to you,
program.
but the last word would be like, as you know, that my approach has been to find a solution. The first thing is that I'm not very happy with certain things that are happening, from the government right now. And but then there's one plus. The plus point is you can talk freely. If this was a Congress regime, I wouldn't be talking to you like this. So we can talk freely. There's a hope. There are a lot of people in the system who would like to, see the truth about Netaji come out. So they can be persuaded and influenced, provided the persuasion comes, it is maintained. What I was thinking, what the idea which especially my Bengali friends have to keep in mind, the tragedy of Subhash Chandra Bose is that he stood for the country. He doesn't have anybody to stand behind him, no political party, no state government, no state, nothing like that. Every icon that we have in our country, Bhagat Singh, Shivaji Maharaj. Shivaji Maharaj is liked by everybody. You all admire, you all revere Shivaji Maharaj. But then the reverence with he is treated in Maharashtra cannot be compared for some very basic, very obvious reason, because they are closer to him than we are, in Delhi and other places. Now, we all, when we were all young, most of us were young, we all know that Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and Sardar Patel were mere footnotes in history. And look what a remarkable change has been brought about, by their followers. How things change dramatically in just 2 decades. When I go, of course, I'm looking forward to visiting Statue of Unity, and of course, I think the Netaji's followers need to learn from there. Now, when everybody's talking about Netaji's become an issue of political, discourse, I'm very happy. That's in a positive sense. Good, fantastic. Netaji should be discussed. There should be debates about him. Otherwise, he would, everything about him will remain lie hidden, and there'll be no chance for us to discuss, all these issues which are getting discussed now. So we need to follow these people, and the way to do it is to, try and create a caucus of members of parliament. Ideally, they should be bipartisan, but they should stand up for Subhash Chandra Bose. Parties are not letting individual MPs to raise questions in parliament. Even if they did, nobody would listen to them, because that's how things work in our country. But if 4, 5, 6 MPs, were to, join hands, study the issue, and then, start by raising. I'm hearing a lot of talk about, Bengali pride. What price Bengali pride if you can't speak about Netaji? I mean, if I were a Bengali, I would be extremely proud of the fact that one of us freed India, and I would be not very pleased to see that Bengali politicians are, vying with each other to prove who's a bigger Gandhi Bhakt. So that's something. So they should speak up Subhash Bose. They should try and form a caucus. I believe there's a caucus for Dalit MPs in India. and if they join hands, the day 5 MPs stand up in parliament and question, for example, the Einstein narrative, believe me, you will have MPs from all over the country. They will start supporting them, because every time the issue of Netaji has been raised, there's support from all over the world, all over the country. But the trigger or the fire must come from Bengal. If the government of India can be cornered on the issue of intelligence, five MPs at all will take. They should stand up and start asking questions. Believe me, it will be all over the media. This it's not no rocket science. The government of India, for example, they are getting away with what they have done to the Faizabad Gumnami Baba issue. There are clear-cut High Court orders that his belongings must be displayed. The previous government of Akhilesh Yadav obeyed the court orders. The belongings have been displayed in Ram Katha Sangralaya in Ayodhya, close to Ram Temple. This government right now is not letting that museum open to public, because they know very well the day a museum is open to public, people will start asking questions about this man. Why don't they? So that's how it is. So there has to be effort made by people, and that should start from Calcutta, Bengal. 4 or 5 MPs coming together, and they should and there has to be caucus for that's how you can handle it. My feeling, my impression, of course I didn't have time to get into it. I've heard from multiple sources, not 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm a journalist. I don't get my information only from the books. Keep talking to people in intelligence, security, so on and so forth. So there are, if a book Conundrum, Chandrachud Ghosh and mine is like 850 pages thick, rest assured we have got much more data which we cannot write. I cannot write what I was told by so and so. So I'm pretty convinced I can, and I have already bet my life on it. I can stick my neck out. He was here. The government of India knows about it. There are problem areas, but this can be ironed out. The truth must come out, and the day 5 MPs were to stand in parliament and ask the right question and insist on having an answer. Let me end the whole thing by, since we are talking about parliament. In 1987, when this issue of Gumnami Baba was, started, making news, a question was put in parliament. Answer was given by then Deputy Home Minister P. Chidambaram. The question was, who's Gumnami Baba? People are saying it's Subhash Bose. The answer given was by the Home Ministry that information is being collected and will be tabled in the House. After 10 years, the same question was asked. The answer was, information is being collected and will be tabled in the House. That's what you have. The government of India is dodging this case from day one. They are dodging courts, they are dodging assembly. But the problem, people don't want to believe it, so they are not paying attention to it. They have fudged DNA reports. I didn't have time. I've already told you that you have a third-rate Sarkari report of handwriting. You have a first report from American expert and also Indian experts. So all kind of tricks have been done to, because they don't want the issue to come out, because if it comes out, their own narrative will be in danger. That narrative is available in the Western countries, so the entire machinery, supports, especially the IFS lot, because IFS people in the Indian Foreign Service, they keep us lecturing us about non-land movement and SARC friendship, but they make it a point to settle their children in Europe and America. But they keep preaching me about the virtue of supporting African countries or and SARC and so on. So please don't take me wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong to be part of the Western nation, but as I said, don't become Bobby Jindal. That's my problem is. Don't disown your culture. Nobody's asking you to. So no American is is having a problem with that. America is a fantastic melting pot. It has culture of all the world in the world. For example, I'm referring to America because most people are in America. So nobody's asking America that you should forget your culture and you should not talk about your heritage. You be good Americans, but at the same time, you don't forget about your ancestors. Nobody's asking you to do that thing. So that way. But then we have more elite class. They have this idea. So it can be done. There's nothing. There's no rocket science here. The only thing we need some power. I'm powerless. I only have data. I don't have power. I don't have MPs. I don't have anything available. But with little bit of networking, if something can be done, we can reach out to people and tell them, look, I've already spoken to some people, some MPs are open to the idea. They are discussing. Of course, not everybody is anti-Netaji. Well, in fact, even in Congress, people are not anti-Netaji. By the way, in private talks, they talk favorably of it. Not everybody is an anti-national country. So that's how it is. So if something can be done along those lines, personal connections, networks matter a lot. People tend to believe their own relatives. So that's how it is. So that's
thank you, Anuj Bhai.
Thank you
Amazing program. As we were saying, almost 110 10 shares has already been made. আরো বেশি লোককে দেখান যে কথাগুলো অনুজদা বললেন। আপনারা শেয়ার করুন এই প্রোগ্রামটার লিঙ্কটা। আমাদের ভাইয়ের বেঙ্গল ওয়েলের ভাইয়েদের পেজ থেকে এই প্রোগ্রামটা লাইভ যাচ্ছে, আপনারা আরো শেয়ার করুন। আমাদের এনআরআইস ফর বেঙ্গলেও আমরা শেয়ার করেছি, সব জায়গা থেকে এটা শেয়ার করুন যাতে আরো বেশি লোক শুনতে পারে, অনুজদার মতো লোকেরা আরো সাপোর্ট পায়। অ্যান্ড ট্রুথ শুড বি প্রিভেল। নেতাজির সম্বন্ধে আজকের দিনে দাঁড়িয়ে এই শপথটা এতে আমরা নিই যে নেতাজি সুভাষচন্দ্র বোস যে যেখানেই থাকুক হৃদয়ে কিন্তু একজনই, তিনি হলেন নেতাজি। জয় হিন্দ, ভারত মাতা কি জয়, জয় শ্রীরাম। ধন্যবাদ।